The death of the boogeyman, Charles Miles Maddox Manson, part 2. We completed part 1 early this morning. Oh, I don't know. It was 3, 4 o'clock. And we talked about Charles Manson, the man. And today we want to talk a little bit more about Charles Manson, the myth. Charles Manson, the legend, if you will. Don't get sidetracked with what I mean by that. But we talked last night about Charles Manson, the man. We talked this morning about Charles Manson, the man. We talked about the upbringing. We talked about his incarcerations. We talked about the things that led up to the situation that occurred with the Tate LaBianca murders. Michelle, I salute you. And I just got out of the shower, so let me redress and get my stuff back on. And ladies and gentlemen, I think that we have been sold a bill of goods and we have been duped. And the Manson thing may well have been one of the first great psyops. And I'm looking at that. We have to talk about it. We have to see if it's real. GTA, Gospel Truth Army, on my wrist. Manson spent over half his life in jail, and that includes from the time that he was a baby. So the man spent over half his life in jail, which is really amazing. Over half his life in jail. Charles Manson spent over half his life in jail, which is almost beyond belief. It really is almost beyond belief. Almost beyond belief. And yet we just assumed everything that we were told. And I believe we may have assumed everything that we were sold about Charles Manson. Now, let's talk about some good news first, if you don't mind. Let's talk about some good news first. And that good news would be this news. That good news is, come on. That good news is the great extravaganza on December the 10th, right here in Clearwater, Florida, with myself, Heidi Vandenberg, young oracle, Vedic astrologer, Vedic life coach, Jenny Moonstone, queen of tarot, a gifted commentator on society and culture. Also, Dan of Overwatch channel is scheduled to be there as well. What to do when you're dead. That's the main theme. It's the extravaganza of enlightenment. Sunday, December 10, 2017, Clearwater, Florida. Tickets available at www.jeffreydarty.com. Come with questions, leave enlightened. And we're still looking and believing we're going to have at least one more super special guest along with your registration. Send your birth date, time, place, exact time. Heidi Vandenberg will send you a PDF of your Vedic astrology chart. And I will send you a basic rundown on your basic numerology. That's all included in the price, as is the lunch. There's going to be at least 4 sessions over the day. $50 includes everything. And spaces are literally going fast. We have to cap it at 100. So get your reservations in and let's get ready to have a great time down in Clearwater. Let's get ready to have some fun down in Clearwater. And let's get ready to do what we do best, and that is learn, that is understand, and that is get things going. And we appreciate the fact that we're going to do it. And we want to welcome you and invite you to come and be a part of this great event down in Clearwater, Florida, down here in Clearwater, Florida. And let me stop sharing. That's my problem. Down here in Clearwater, Florida. And let's talk about Charles Manson now. And more than more than Charles Manson. Let's talk about the situation. Hey, Big Teddy Smooth, the situation that the Charles Manson myth was born out of. And by myth, I don't mean that it's not true, but I mean myth is an epic story, and we're going to look at the epic story that was born out of what was known as the Tate murders. And it's been suggested, and I'm going to look through this, and I'm going to see if I can't make this bigger. First of all, I'm going to look through this, and we're going to go through this very learned article. And I want you to understand that this is not in any way, shape, or form sympathy for the devil. This is not in any way, shape, or form sympathy for Charles Manson. But this is the questioning, were the Tate murders a false flag? And I know we're calling it a false flag, but I think it would be better if we said, were the Tate murders a psyop? And were the Tate murders the greatest unknown success story of Project Chaos? I've tried to reach this man, Miles Mathis. I don't know if he's still alive. I don't know if he's still well. I don't know if he's still with us. But if he does see this, I would very much like to reach out to you and have you come on this program and talk about this great work yourself. This is going to be several chapters long. I don't know. This is part 2. I don't know how many we're going to get to, but because I started reading through this, and every bit of it is so fascinating that I had to highlight the whole thing. This is Sharon Tate, the woman that history tells us was savagely murdered, the pregnant woman that history tells us was savagely murdered. And this is her on the set of a movie called Fearless Vampire Killers, which in its own way is rather interesting as we approach this subject. And this is an interesting quote by Jay Sebring. And this just gets back to me, and it's really slammed me hard, and it's really hit me in a personal way. And I don't know why my life seems to have been interspersed, and there's so much craziness that my life has run in contact with. And let me tell you what I'm talking about here. And it almost bothers me. It really does. It almost makes me feel like something's really, really wrong. And I don't know what's really, really wrong with this silly thing either. We're going to have to adjust this. I really feel like there's some hardcore see, this is something's kind of coming against us. So I don't understand why this thing is this way. So we may have to make it small like this. See, this is just really bothering me, ladies and gentlemen. And I apologize for it because this was not happening to me at all. And yet now it is happening to me. And it bothers me that it's trying to mess us up. It's trying to keep us from getting to the bottom of a very important story. And I want to show it to you, but I might just have to read it because this is really bothering me, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't understand why this thing has been working perfectly, and now all of a sudden it wants to mess with us. But that's okay. We will overcome. So let's try again. And this is the thing that really bugs me because you can see how much of this I highlighted. Jay Sebring. Jay Sebring was the man that invented the man's hair salon. And Jay Sebring is knee deep, neck deep into this. And Jay Sebring, I'm almost 100% sure, and I want to make sure before I state this, that it is true. And if I was wrong, let me know. But I believe Jay Sebring was killed that night. History tells us that Jay Sebring was killed that night when Sharon Tate was killed. He was there. And the thing that I talk about, why are you rambling on about your life being involved with such weirdness, Jeff? Well, Jay Sebring was the boss of a man named Larry Geller. And Larry Geller is a man that I consider a friend, a man that I've talked to a couple of times. Larry Geller was the hairstylist for Elvis. And Elvis is spiritual confidant. And if Jay Sebring was involved in the Manson weirdness, and Larry was a close confidant of Jay, and Larry somehow wound up with Elvis and also wound up with contact with McCartney, it really begins to disturb me, ladies and gentlemen, but that's another story for another day. Two things that this author does and two things we're going to look at. One is the crime scene photographs of Sharon Tate. We're going to make that as easy as we can. And the author says those aren't really what you think they are anyway. They aren't what we've been led to believe. And we're going to follow this author as he builds what he says is a slow, strong case that the Tate LaBianca situation was fake. And by the time we get to those photos, that we will be pretty sure that they aren't what they're supposed to be, and we won't be afraid to look at them. So prepare your mind and your eyes to make it clear why the murders need to be faked. So that's the thing to do, is talk about the whole idea that the Manson murders were faked, and of course the whole idea why the Manson murders were faked. The author believes that it was a manufactured tragedy. And after thoroughly investigating the murders, he believes that there are a lot of dark theories that were also wrong and planted. This is a conspiracy within a conspiracy within a conspiracy. Alternative theories for the major tragedies also seem to have been invented by those that are involved in psychological operations. Mae Brussel was one of those people that we have believed got to the bottom of it, but she's always fingered the CIA, which, though it be in this author's mind true enough, that she didn't go beyond that and was actually a person that directed us away from truth. He says she was a poor researcher, or she was also CIA. He believes that this person was CIA. And if she'd been on to anything big, she wouldn't even have been allowed on the radio, which brings up another interesting point with me, but we're not going to share that. She was allowed to talk because she was muddying the waters, he says. The CIA loves to have the waters muddied, of course. Her 1971 interview starts with a clue. The author says it's either conscious or subconscious. In her opening comment, she says, in order to control people, you disguise certain persons and send them into roles of influence. They become actors on a stage, and they influence our minds in a way that's not real, but that affects a reality which will touch us later. The emphasis in that passage is the author's. As the author's is attempting to show, he's going to show that's precisely what happened. Certain persons within the Manson narrative were disguised, others were actors, and all staged an event that was not real, but was used to control our view of the world for decades. Now, I'll come into the chat room in just a minute, but let's get this first part down. It's the author's belief, and of course, I think it holds enough credibility that I'm taking our time and putting my credibility on the line, as it were, to bring this to you. Although I'd like to take the tack that I'm interviewing this author. I'm not sharing you my opinions. I'm sharing with you the opinions of this author and commentating upon his work. So this is not Jeffrey Daugherty telling you this. This is this author telling you this. And the author's name, once again, is Miles Mathis. So this is me interviewing Miles Mathis in absentia, interviewing his own words. So Mr. Mathis believes that the whole Tate LaBianca murders were manufactured. And he thinks it's incredibly strange that it's lasted this long. In his opinion, the whole scenario was so poorly constructed, so full of holes, so absurd that he can't believe that it worked to start with. And as we go through, we're going to see what the author calls red flags everywhere. A false flag with red flags. Only the fact that the media is so completely controlled, that the public was so gullible. And remember, this is the late 60s. That's the only things that begin to explain how this was passed off. Hollywood and the government couldn't pull off such a hoax today, he believes. Given special effects, internet, other advances, people are getting a little bit more savvy regarding visuals. We can tell when things look fake, and the new set builders would have to be a little more careful than the old set builders if they want to fool us. Unfortunately, it would appear no one has gone back to the files to pull this one apart. Although Sandy Hook, in his opinion, fell apart within a matter of weeks, the Tate hoax has stood for 43 years. Ladies and gentlemen, understand what we're saying here. We're understanding that one of the seminal things, one of the seminal events of our history, one of the seminal events of our modern society, he's saying that it's fake. He's saying that it was manufactured. He's saying that it wasn't even really true. Let's see what you're saying in the chat room. Ron, I salute you. Thank you very much. Imagine how many would have never gone hungry had the World Bank never been. Well, that's a little off the track, but it's true. Manson was deep, says Leslie Esquivel. How many have signed up by now for the Clearwater event? We're pushing 50, so get your registrations in. I read this book by Miles W. Mathis. At first, I said ridiculous until I read the whole book. Good research, Jeff. Thank you, Love for Life. I really don't know how I came across it. It was just random. I saw that Manson died. If you remember, I was live doing another show, and I saw that Manson died, and something just clicked in me. You got to look at that. And as I looked, as I continue to look, here we go down the rabbit hole. Her husband raped an underage girl and is still walking. We're talking about Tate's husband. Well, that was Polanski, right? The director, Roman Polanski. Wish I could go to the Clearwater event. Well, come on down. Mercury is in retrograde. Look at the Manson interviews. He's never in cuffs. He's never in chains. He always has full access. And this is, I've done a lot of work in prisons as a pastor. And no matter, at least when I was there, if I said to the guards, hey, it's no problem, we don't have to have the chains or the handcuffs. They sometimes would take the leg chains off, but they would never, ever take off the handcuffs. So Love for Life makes a good point. It's very odd that Charlie was able and allowed to be interviewed with those cuffs off. Of course, he was a celebrity. Who knows? But it does go against all prison protocol. And as Violet Flame says, we are following the spiral. It is very disturbing. April has read about and looked at the murder photos. Big Teddy Smooth says, whoa, trust me. Yes. Hello, John in England. Messing with our minds again. Absolutely. Marsden Brooks in the house. Leslie says she can relate to the way he thinks and says things. He was not insane from what I've seen. I think there might have been more than one bat in that belfry, Leslie. There might have been more than one Chucky at home, and at least one of them wasn't insane, but sometimes he switches to that other guy, and whoa, there was some crazy going on inside there. Jeff is inspiring, passionate, kind, and helpful. Well, thank you very much. Is he saying that Tate was never murdered by Manson? He's saying we're going to look at it. What is it? It's 18 minutes into the show, and already you want the answers. Get out of the microwave mentality. It's time to study, look, ponder, investigate. Ask the rods if it was a hoax. We'll do that, but rods aren't meant to make up your mind. Rods are meant to confirm your decision. So let's actually look at the data first. What do you say we actually go through some data? What do you say we actually go through and look at what happened before we start checking with divining rods? I love divining rods. I got intention candles over here. I got divining rods. I got divining decks and tarot, but I'm an investigator. And I'm doing my best to be an investigator and to actually investigate things. And I don't know why. See, we're having some opposition, and that's good. That means this is going to be good. Deborah Hickman says she remembers when it happened. It was very disturbing. It was supposed to be very disturbing. Damn crazy energy, yes. Still watching your shows. Look forward to it every day. I wonder if it was a warning to Polanski and others in media. Deb is on the right track. Violet, sorry that you got burned, sweetheart. Hey, next door neighbor in England. I'm in Ireland. Okay, so let's go back and let's look at this again. And let's continue to look at it. What we have to do, first of all, is look at the history and politics that led up to the Manson murders. The alleged Tate murders took place on August 9th, 1969. And, you know, to us, that doesn't mean anything, but look at what was going on in August 9th, 1969. This will blow your mind. The Tate murders took place on August 9th, 1969. The hippie movement was peaking. Monterey Pop Festival happened in 1967. And check this out, ladies and gentlemen. Woodstock happened 1 week after the alleged Tate murders. How amazing is that? Woodstock happened 1 week after the alleged Tate murders. The Tate murders were on August 9, and Woodstock opened August 15th. Is that a coincidence? The author says by the end of this paper, we will say no. People's Park at Berkeley opened in April of 1969. The park was a makeshift public garden, but it was a center of anti-war speeches and gatherings. So remember, Manson happened, the Tate murders happened beginning of August 1969. This park in Berkeley opened up in April of 69, and it became the center for anti-war speeches and gatherings. And in response to these speeches and gatherings, Governor Ronald Reagan, another one of my icons, I tell you what, you can't have icons in this world anymore that are human because they tend to fall before you. They tend to be compromised before your eyes. And my last remaining public icon a little bit is President Trump. So, wow. Anyway, Reagan, because of the massive speeches, closed the park and sent in the National Guard. 800 police and guards given permission by Chief of Staff Ed Meese to do whatever was necessary, attacked 6,000 unarmed protesters, firing live rounds. One person was killed, one person permanently blinded by buckshot, hundreds injured. And although the university and the city of Berkeley were on the side of the protesters, Reagan declared a state of emergency and sent in 2,700 more National Guardsmen. Anti-war protesters were arrested. The city was under a state of siege by its own government. May, June, July, 3 months, 90 days before the alleged Tate murders. Do you understand what was going on in America? The hippie movement was at its height. Those smelly, dirty, sex, love, rock and roll hippies were taking over, or were threatening to do so, and it at least looked like they were really a big problem. Reagan showed no remorse in defending his actions, this author says, said that the killing of the student was necessary. And on the one-year event of the anniversary after the alleged Tate murders, Reagan said, if it takes a bloodbath, let's get it over with. No more appeasement. Wow. Governor Ronald Reagan says, let's kill some more students that are protesting according to their First Amendment rights, if that's what it takes to stop them from protesting against our going over land and sea to kill people with whom we don't happen to agree. Bloody Thursday also happened May 4th, 1970, the massacre at Kent State University, where 4 unarmed students were killed, 9 wounded by the Ohio National Guard. 4 days later, 11 people were bayoneted at the University of New Mexico by the National Guard. 7 days after that, 2 students were killed, 12 injured at Jackson State College in Mississippi. These deaths and injuries led to a nationwide strike of over 4 million college students, with more than 900 colleges closing. Are you beginning to understand and to get an idea of what was taking place in the United States during this time? President Nixon also joined Ronald Reagan, governor of California, in saying no appeasement. Nixon blamed the deaths and woundings on the students. He said the students were pawns of foreign communists and set into motion an accelerated infiltration of college campuses via the Houston Plan. Do you understand that? President Nixon infiltrated college campuses to spy on these people. New declassified documents prove FBI and CIA were both busy countering anti-war groups on campus and off, and they still are. Wikipedia even admits on the Houston Plan page that the plan was revoked. Even though the plan was revoked, many of its provisions were implemented anyway. In hindsight, it looks like the only provision not implemented was the creation of concentration camps for protesters. This is deep stuff. This is dark stuff. This is government taking over and declaring war on its citizens for doing little more than being out of the societal mainstream and protesting against war. As you study the alleged bloodbath that was the Tate murders, remember the quote of Ronald Reagan above. That quote being, "If it takes a bloodbath, let's get it over with. No more appeasement." I also remember that the alleged murders took place in LA, the home of Hollywood, the home of Ronald Reagan, and was also one of the huge hippie capitals of the nation and a center for anti-war sentiment. And also remember, ladies and gentlemen, that Ronald Reagan was an actor. This is deep stuff. I feel like we have to take a little break every now and then. I was watching an interview of his and looked at my Facebook memories. I posted, "If Manson can find a partner, so can I," 3 years ago on November 18th. That is crazy timing, Leslie. The summer of '69 in California was wild. Continued into the winter with the Zodiac Killer, says Marsden Brooks. Marsden Brooks says the Black Panthers as well. OSU riot, says Deb Schiller. 1970 Attica riot. There was a run of them. They were probably molding him from birth, says Violet Flame. Violet Flame, I'd encourage you to watch the first show if you didn't see it yet. I think wars will become a thing of the past. Well, I hope so anyway. My hopes are with you, Mark Coyle. Kent Nichols says, same game, different names. Unfortunately, I'm forced to agree with you on that as well. Here's the history. Richard Nixon was president in 1969. He beat Hubert Humphrey by 500,000 votes out of 73 million cast. He won by 0.7%. And I see some eerie parallels between 1969 and 2016 when President Trump was elected. Trump was elected by a razor-thin majority, as was Richard Nixon. Some say he lost the popular vote. I'm not sure that that's accurate, but it was that close. Ronald Reagan was an actor. It could be argued that Trump is an actor, although it was really a reality show. He never played anyone but himself. So I think calling Donald Trump an actor is a stretch. You're not an actor if you play yourself. So I reject the idea that Donald Trump is an actor. I don't believe he's an actor. But anyway, the correlation could be drawn. And the thing to remember is that both the Democrat and the Republican Party in 1968, their platforms were in support of the Vietnam War. And both the Republican and the Democratic conventions featured riots, widespread riots in 1968. The fact of the matter is that the entire country was against the war, the Vietnam War. And one of the few, and here we go again, curiouser and curiouser, one of the few politicians that came out against the war was the governor of Michigan, a man named George Romney. If the name Romney rings a bell, remember Mitt Romney? George Romney came out against the war. The press crucified him. He lost his next election. After that, all the candidates kept quiet about the war. Should have been topic number one, but it was ignored. Reminds me of when Romney had the Republican nomination. And I'm going to ask you to go back into history a little bit with me. This was 2012. And I don't know how many of you could pull yourself away from Lost or American Idol or whatever was on at that time and actually watch the debate between Mitt Romney and then President Barack Obama. The first debate, Romney went after Obama hard on Benghazi. He reduced the silver-tongued Obama into a stammering, blubbering, blah, 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 visibly sweating. He looked like Nixon against Kennedy in, what was it, 64? No, 60, I think. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Romney had Obama on the ropes. There was no way to answer Benghazi. Romney had him. I remember sitting there thinking that night, Romney's got him. This election's over. Obama's going to lose. Hillary, Benghazi's going to hang him. And then, and if you remember the results from the press, oh, Romney going after the president, it's horrible. And Romney blew him away in that debate. Everyone knew that Romney had whooped his ass. And then as the debates went on and Romney shot up in the polls, and then guess what happened? Mitt Romney never mentioned Benghazi again. Mitt Romney abandoned a winning strategy. He never mentioned Benghazi again. Why not? Did Mitt get a little tug on his sacred underwear and said, hey, look, Mitt, don't be talking about that stuff. And if you do, there might be some photos released. There might be some interviews, some videos released about you. Why did Mitt Romney abandon a winning strategy without saying another word? Because he was probably warned, don't do it. Don't upset the apple cart. It's not your time, Mitt. And to add more intrigue to it, when it became clear that Trump was going to win, at least the Republican nomination, there was no way Trump could ever win the general election. It was going to be the end of the Republican Party. Who did they dust off and bring out? He said, oh, okay, I'll take the nomination if you want to give it to me. Romney. Mitt Romney. But it became quickly apparent that the people were not going to leave Donald Trump. So were they trying to give Mitt a little sop so he could get back into the race? And was Mitt supposed to come back into the race, Mitt Romney, so that the anointed one, Hillary Clinton, could become president? Was it supposed to be Clinton's time? But the Donald rose up, and we lifted the Donald up on a wave of populists and a wave of hope that maybe there could be one last chance for American sovereignty. Very, very strange, ladies and gentlemen, how history does seem to repeat itself. Nixon was in office in January 69. J. Edgar Hoover was head of the FBI. Both Nixon and Hoover hated the hippies, wanted to destroy them. It's now part of public record, mainly due to their anti-war stance. War was big business, and it still is, cousin. And hippies could not be allowed to get in the way of it. It's known that there was that the FBI created an entire mission around infiltrating and discrediting the anti-war movement. Have you heard about COINTELPRO? Not a conspiracy theory. declassified, common knowledge. Read about it on Wikipedia. It ran in the 60s, peaking in the late 60s, ending in 71, allegedly. The FBI was spying on the hippie movement. The FBI had infiltrated and was spying on the anti-war movement via this exercise. It wasn't an exercise, this organization, this, I can't think of the right word, this operation, that's the word, which was known as COINTELPRO. Let's just take a quick look at that on Wikipedia, COINTELPRO. And I don't know if I've been sharing this with you or not, but I'm just reading it anyway, so you could see it on the screen. COINTELPRO, Wikipedia. I said COINTELPRO, Wikipedia. A series of covert illegal projects conducted by the U.S. FBI, surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, disrupting domestic political organizations. Targeted groups. Oh, targeted groups. Targeted groups by the FBI. Targeted groups by the United States. Anti-war, anti-Vietnam War protesters, civil rights movement, Black Power movement, Martin Luther King. Kind of like the deplorables that Hillary Clinton talked about. Kind of like the people that were going to vote for Trump anyway, the people that want to defend the Second Amendment. Sounds kind of exactly like that, doesn't it? So COINTELPRO was a real thing. COINTELPRO is not just a conspiracy theory. And it's funny, that's all Veltman used to talk about before he started making a butt of himself and got himself banned. And here we are talking about it. Let me go back to the chat room for just a second and see what else we've got going on. Just checking the chat room. Kent State, dumbing down, same game, many names. Can you ask the Rods if Manson was a patsy? We will, but we don't ask Rods first. We do our research first, and we let Rods confirm. A lot of characters play themselves, yeah, but they don't play themselves. Sharon Tate's husband, Roman Polanski, yes. More infamous, in my opinion, yeah. Hadn't been a pre-rehearsed statement, so he freaked. He was an actor, isn't everyone in politics these days? Jeff, I sent you a few emails. Okay. If you ordered a Diamond New Testament, you'll get it. I have to go in, if it's an ebook, and do those by hand, so it's not instantaneous all the time. And if it gets mailed to you, it has to come through the mail. Romney should have ran. The Mormons, huge here. Romney CEO at the local Mormon church. Interesting. Well, Marsden, about voting, I kind of in an agreement with Mark Twain. Mark Twain said if voting was so important, they wouldn't let us do it. Somebody likes the Grinch shirt. What's a hanging Chad? Marsden, you know what a hanging Chad is. COINTELPRO spying on us on YouTube now. Very well could be. I'm a deplorable, says Bonsai. Can we have a good Rod question session today? I think that could probably be arranged. The world is one big stage. I agree. They're scripting in order to bring it. Yes, I agree. Government holding down higher consciousness. We're being manipulated. And GTA is busting out the game. Yes. I'm reading Diamonds and Dung, best $1.99 I ever spent. Good for you, Love for Life, because I think I raised them all to $3.99, so you got it in just in time. So let's go back. And not known to many people, The CIA had its own version called Chaos, not a conspiracy theory, now admitted by the CIA. Chaos started by President Johnson in 1967, expanded by Nixon in 1969, run by Richard Helms and the notorious James Jesus Angleton. Nixon linked COINTELPRO and Chaos. It went into its tightest security mode in July 1969, the month before the alleged Tate murders. The fake war on drugs was used for the same purpose at the same time. Seymour Hersh blew the whistle on Chaos in a 1974 New York Times article. Yeah, but since the New York Times is controlled by the CIA, we have to assume it's damage control, the omission of lesser crimes to cover larger ones. I agree with that. One of the larger ones remaining hidden until now is, in this author's opinion, the control of the Tate murders. So they're advancing, this author, the idea that the Tate murders were created as part of COINTELPRO, as part of Project Chaos, to bring disrepute to and, if possible, effectively end the hippie movement. J. Edgar Hoover said that the purpose of the COINTELPRO operation was, and I quote J. Edgar Hoover, founder and at this time director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, COINTELPRO operation was to, quote, expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize any anti-war group, hippies, socialist, civil rights movement, NAACP, National Lawyers Guild, and even Albert Einstein. It sounds a lot like By Any Means Necessary, who, talking about Black Panthers, and I know he wasn't one, but Malcolm X, I don't believe Malcolm X was a Black Panther, but he said by any means necessary, burn, baby, burn. Wasn't Hoover saying the same thing? Expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize? Misdirect, discredit, otherwise neutralize. The author asks a fascinating question here. Why has no one ever asked if the alleged Tate murders might have been just another instance of discrediting the hippies and the anti-war protesters? Looking back now, as Charles Manson died yesterday, looking back with the perspective of history, the awful press that Manson and his followers gave to hippies caused the movement to be dead within months by early 1970. The entire anti-war movement was dealt a crushing blow by the Tate murders, since the press used it to marginalize the hippies and all protesters and malcontents. This was a well-bought success for the government. They were able to spin Vietnam for 5 more years, spend countless more billions. The Vietnam War didn't end until 8 months after Nixon resigned in 1974. What day did Nixon resign? Interesting tidbit. Nixon resigned August 9th, 1974, exactly 5 years to the day of the alleged Tate murders. John Didion wrote, many people I know in LA believe the 60s ended abruptly on August 9th, 1969, the exact moment when word of the murders traveled like brushfire through the community. Not only LA, but across the country, the 60s hippie movement died with the Tate murders. And this author's asking, I think, a legitimate question. Were the Tate murders intended to end the hippie movement? It seems awfully convenient for President Nixon, Governor Reagan, Director Hoover, and the Pentagon involved in a highly profitable war in Southeast Asia. And what were we doing over there anyway? Do we care if some people in the North of a country that couldn't get to us? Is it going against people in the south of a country that couldn't get to us? It was all a travesty. But it was a perfect crime at the perfect time. Seems a little convenient in this author's opinion. Seems a little too perfect in this author's opinion. And I find myself intrigued by the possibilities that he's raising. Were the Tate murders intended to end the hippie movement? Were the Tate murders awfully convenient for Nixon, Reagan, Hoover, and the Pentagon? Were the Tate murders the perfect crime happening at the perfect time? Doesn't it seem rather convenient that the first so-called cult killings known in modern culture should occur on cue, as if from the CIA, just in time to stop the rising peace movement? What a coincidence that hippies would choose to go insane 6 days before Woodstock, murdering a beautiful blonde female, the perfect victim in any tragedy, still pregnant with a child, another perfect victim. And what a coincidence that they should write anti-government slogans on the wall like "death to pigs." More on that in a second. What a coincidence their leader would be the perfect patsy, a serial jailbird who had asked, begged, pleaded not to be released from jail. Watch the program from yesterday. Manson didn't want to be released from the jail. How convenient that the government set up someone who wanted to be set up. A man that wanted to go back to jail for life. The FBI was looking for a patsy. If the FBI was looking for a patsy, they couldn't have found someone better than Manson. Wild-eyed look, guitar playing, singing like hippies, long hair, lifetime criminal, wanted to go back to jail. How convenient. Manson was actually playing a part working for the FBI and CIA all along, in this author's opinion. He wasn't set up. He was another actor, a willing patsy, playing the part he'd been hired to play. And he, in the opinion of this author, was the most brilliant actor of them all. And he still is, well, at least until last night. And this is something that leapt out to me as we talked about last night. They wrote on the walls there, "Death to pigs." They wrote on the walls, "Helter Skelter." And it just so happens that Charles Manson was in the same group home with a kid that would go on to become the lipstick killer, so-called the lipstick killer, because he would write slogans on the wall with lipstick. Did Charlie get the idea to write "Death to pigs"? Or more correctly, to have people write "Death to pigs"? Did Charlie get the idea to write "Helter Skelter"? Or more correctly, have people write "Helter Skelter" from his buddy in the group home, the lipstick killer? Ladies and gentlemen, next time we'll look at the actors in this sordid scheme, and we'll continue to investigate author Miles Mathis' contention that Charles Manson and the Tate murders was a psyop, as we look deeper into the death of the boogeyman, Charles Manson, Part 2. I'm the Christian whistleblower, Jeffrey Daugherty. This has been The Gospel Truth. Death of the Boogeyman, Part 2. Who was Charlie Manson? What did he do? And how does that affect me and you? Deep questions, powerful questions, interesting questions, questions no one else is asking, questions that we will keep asking until we get to the bottom of them. Going back into the chat room one more time. You gave me the honor of listening to me. I give you the honor of listening to you. Wow, there's a lot going on here. The world is one big stage. I think of Elvis songs. I'm caught in a trap. That's a good one. Can't walk out. Interesting. They're scripting reality. The government is holding down higher consciousness. I ordered some goodies from Jeff's store for Christmas. I saw those, Sandra. They're processing right now. Thank you for that. My sister wants rods. Well, she can go to the website and get them. John Shepard, are you as confused as me? Bro, I didn't say enlightenment was easy. Go back to the show yesterday. Watch from the beginning. And no, Violet Flame is not confused. She knows exactly what's going on. This is definitely interesting. Thank you. They don't need to do anything. Watch the racial slurs, please. Chaos, like in the old TV show Get Smart. Oh, guess when the Get Smart was on? Late 60s. Great catch, Liz. That is very smart. They have a front row seat. COINTELPRO was real. Malcolm X was Muslim. That's correct. I forgot that. Miles Mathis is great at exposing historical lies. If he's still alive, I'd like to know how to contact him. I'd like to get him on the show. There are people who think Jerry Seinfeld is Barack Obama. Oh my. I don't see the connection. Malcolm X was not a Black Panther. That's right. He was Nation of Islam. Lies in the news, some truths in the movies. Roman Polanski sacrificed Sharon's baby and she did not want this. Interesting, Christy Belly. I believe that theory as much as I believe the Mandela effect. Well, then, you know what? That's okay because you don't have to believe it. Some of you guys may be able to help me with this. I haven't looked into it, but it could be possible. Everything we see on TV is strategic. We had a lifetime role to play. I want more. My gears are turning. We will give you more, Violet Flame. Not confused. Someone said Obama was Seinfeld. Yeah, that confuses me. Years later, they had the murders in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Jeff McDonald, hippie murder. Ted Gunderson. CIA, Vatican agents, mercenaries at every level. Anderson Cooper, Vanderbilt family. Yes, he's still alive, Jeff. He has a website. But I couldn't find any contact information. Do you know his website? It's probably milesmathis.com or something, right? Well, I will be back later with another portion of this broadcast. And I got a fat cat who is getting disturbingly aggressive about his meaties. He used to just sit there and look at me. Now he comes up here and hollers. And he'll start knocking stuff off. Bro, you gotta step that down. Don't put your claws on my chair. You got to knock it off or we're going to do away with meaties completely at night. When it gets near 6 o'clock, he knows it's 6 o'clock. But anyway, TV and movies are litmus tests for human consciousness, says Marsden Brooks. Podesta and Abramovic. Podesta has a sculpture of Manson killing, satanic ritual abuse. Come here. Come here. The people want to say hello to you. Here's the pest right here in the flesh. This is the pest right here. Screaming and yelling like a baby for his meaties. Well, let me go feed this little fat bastard. He is pretty cute, though. Let me go feed him. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. I'm here to help you guide your own spirit, master your own ascension, and be your own guru. I'm here to encourage you to stay fearless, ask questions, question answers as you unindoctrinate yourself. His name is Rooney, and he's a baby. We'll see you again real soon. Until then, take care.